In this video, we're going to be talking about how to avoid getting the video look and how to achieve more of a kind of quote-unquote cinematic look or filmic look. One of the common misconceptions is that it's about the camera, and most of the time it's not about the camera at all. So you could basically take just about any high-end camera and risk having it look very video-like. I dare say you could even make the Arri Alexa look video-like if you tried hard enough or not hard enough, depending on how you look at it. Certainly the cluster of cameras that are kind of around the Arri Alexa and underneath it, if you mess up on a few things, you will definitely be veering dangerously close to the video look, and nobody wants that. So I'm going to leave lighting at the door for this video, but you'd be quite right in saying that lighting is one of, if not the number one factor in what can create a cinematic looking image. However, there are many choices on the camera side that can have you falling into shooting with a very video look. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first thing that we should probably talk about is frame rate, and this is specifically on the output. So we've been conditioned over many years to perceive 24 frames per second as being the cinematic look. Even if you've got everything else right, if your output is, say, at 48 frames per second, this can give a very video-y aesthetic to your footage. This ties into the next thing that I want to talk about, which is your shutter speed or your shutter angle. Shutter speed and shutter angle are essentially talking about the same thing. I like to use shutter angle when I've got the option to, because even if I change the frame rate, shutter angle is relative to the frame rate, so I'm still going to get the correct amount of motion blur in my footage. The effect that both shutter speed and shutter angle have to the viewer is the amount of motion blur. Again, I think a lot of this comes down to conditioning, and what we have been conditioned to see as cinematic is a 180-degree shutter, or at 24 frames per second, a shutter speed of 1/48. This means the shutter is open half of the duration between frames. So if you're shooting at 24 frames per second and you have a shutter speed of 1/24, that means that your shutter is open 1/24th of a second, meaning that it's open for the entire duration in between each frame. This basically means that you're achieving the maximum amount of motion blur that you can with 24 frames per second video. And this typically isn't very desirable to look at. It just looks a bit meh. Sometimes DPs will make the choice to shoot with this shutter, which is also a 360-degree shutter, because the shutter is open right the way through the duration of the time in between each frames, as we said, to increase the exposure on an image. But it's usually a last resort, unless it's being done in some stylized way. In fact, the slow-mo guys used a 360-degree shutter when they shot a video using wire wool, because this was a stylistic choice and they wanted to get these kind of long streaks with the wire wool. But as I say, 9 times out of 10, it's just a look that you'd probably want to avoid. Alternatively, a really high shutter speed tends to look quite choppy. Again, this is a look if that's what you're going for. For example, in some fight scenes, you might notice that a slightly higher shutter speed is being used. So the next thing I want to talk about is the dynamic range of the camera. So on a technical level, you can't really change the dynamic range of a camera. Once that sensor is put into the body of that camera, and once it's sold and shipped to you, there ain't much you can do. But you might be doing some things that are sacrificing dynamic range. One of which could be not shooting at the native ISO on the camera. Sometimes sticking to that native ISO just isn't ideal or possible, but where you do have the option, you are making the most of where that sensor's sensitivity sits most comfortably. It's important to check what native ISO your camera shoots with, as it varies from camera to camera and usually isn't even consistent across makes. For example, what I'm shooting on right now, which is just my trusty old Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, the native ISO is 400, but on the Ursa 12K, the native ISO is 800. So it's one of those things that it's just good to be aware of. One of the other things that can help to increase dynamic range is shooting in log. So to shoot in log means that you're shooting in a much wider colour space, meaning that you'd be able to capture more highlights and shadows than you would be in a Rec 709 colour space. So on the Blackmagics we have a film profile. On the Arri Alexa, for example, they shoot in Arri Log C, but even if your camera doesn't have this particular setting, if it's a prosumer camera, you can usually change the picture profile settings to something like neutral. You can reduce the contrast and reduce the saturation all the way down, and that'll just help to give a little bit of extra dynamic range in your images. We're not going to be achieving Arri dynamic range anytime soon, but at least we're doing all that we can with the tools that we've got. So the next thing I want to talk about is the skin tones, and this is something that we as humans are just so sensitive to whenever we see footage. If the skin tones are off, we might not know what's exactly wrong, but we'll know that something is amiss. If we see a piece of footage that has incorrect skin tones, we might not fully be able to tell what's wrong, but we'll know that something's up. Arri has just got their skin tones dialed in, and it's one of the many reasons what makes their cameras so desirable among filmmakers. One of the things that can massively improve your chances of getting accurate skin tones in camera is to do a custom white balance. And I know I sound like the teacher on day one of film class, but they were onto something. Ideally, you'd use a grey card, but even just a white piece of printer paper will give you a better result than the preset kind of, sun, clouds, tungsten, fluorescent presets that you've got in camera. Those are helpful for when you're in a pinch, maybe you're in a documentary or whatever. If you can spare a few seconds to do a custom white balance, it really will make all the difference to getting accurate colours in camera. But once everything's been shot, in the edit it's always good to use the vector scope and just to make sure that your skin tones are falling on the skin tone line. So the next thing I want to talk about is over sharpening, or to avoid over sharpening. Many digital cameras have a sharpening option, which by default is often switched on, or it's switched up way higher than it needs to be. If you're using a prosumer camera, then you can reduce the sharpening right the way down, and this will really help to just avoid the kind of digital look. Don't worry, it's not going to make your images look blurry, but it will reduce that kind of digital overly sharp look. It's one of those things that it's really difficult to articulate. You kind of have to see it to kind of understand what it really looks like, but there really is nothing worse than overly sharp digital footage. Plus, the sharpening that's done in camera is actually not done by the sensor, it's done after it's already been read by the sensor. So if you want to add sharpening back in, you could just do it in post. But anyway, that pretty much wraps up this video. If you've got any questions or anything you want me to go through in a little bit more detail, for example the shutter speed stuff, I feel like that could probably do with a bit of a deep dive. If that would be of interest to you, then leave a comment below and I'll be sure to make a future video on that. Other than that, feel free to check out my website and my socials. I'm at Teo Hudson on Instagram, so drop me a follow on there. But anyways, with that being said, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.